Okay, so hold on a minute, I know what you're thinking, but the answer to the title of this video isn't just the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes, okay? Believe it or not, the Kansas City Chiefs core that has now won 2 Super Bowls and counting didn't just pop up randomly one year and click behind a Hall of Fame quarterback. Rather, it took many years of sucking, a revolving door of players, very controversial risks, the ability to keep going after multiple of the worst tragedies in sports history, and of course a lot of luck to put the Kansas City Chiefs in the position they find themselves in the modern era. And although some characters will prove to be more valuable than others, you don't win 7 straight AFC West titles and make 5 straight AFC Championship appearances without help from guys who deserve a lot more recognition. So without further ado, allow me to dig up the Chiefs' secrets to building a potential NFL dynasty from almost nothing. The year is 2001, where at this point in human history, the Kansas City Chiefs found themselves transitioning from one tortured legendary head coach in Marty Schottenheimer to a coach who won a Super Bowl title with the Rams last time he stood on the sidelines in Dick Vermeil, bringing with him the ability for the Chiefs to hit the reset button as a franchise. And a reset was in dire need of happening, as not only was Kansas City coming off of a subpar 7-9 campaign in 2000, but in one of the most shocking moments in football history, after the 1999 season concluded, Derek Thomas, the best player to ever play for the Red and White, passed away due to a blood clot, and even just over a year later, Kansas City was still obviously rattled by this tragedy. Still though, this season the Chiefs had a brutal offense led by quarterback Trent Green, who they traded for, and their all-pro duo in Hall of Fame tight end Tony Gonzalez and Priest Holmes, both of which were also brought in by the Chiefs' longtime general manager Carl Peterson. Then in 2002, the Chiefs slowly improved once more, this time bringing in the human concrete mound that was Willie Roaf, and behind him and others, the Chiefs' offense was arguably the best the NFL had to offer, dropping an unmatched 29.2 points per game. But Kansas City only finished with an 8-8 record due to one of the worst defenses in the NFL and missed the playoffs once again. So here we are in the Dick Vermeil era, where all the pieces were in place, and it seemed like it would only be a matter of time before KC broke through. And to start the 2003 season, the offense picked up right where they left off, with Holmes and Gonzalez carrying as much as they could, but now the defense had held opposing offenses to just over 14 points per game through the first 4 weeks, due to newcomer Vaughn Holiday and both D-tackle Ryan Sims and DB Jerome Woods returning from injury to make immediate impacts, turning the Chiefs' defense into one that could be argued as mildly passable. So now, sitting at 4-0, the Chiefs looked ahead to Mike Shanahan's Broncos in Week 5 as the game that would decide their season's trajectory, and after 52 minutes of slogging along, the Chiefs' secret weapon, who gave them the exact boost they needed when they needed, Dante Hall, scored effectively the game-winning touchdown, going for a 93-yard return on a punt. Except not only did he score a touchdown, but this was his 4th straight game of returning a kick or punt for a touchdown in a row, setting an NFL record in the process. And he wasn't even alone in making history this year either, as Priest Holmes broke the all-time touchdown record at the time for a running back. Tony Gonzalez came in first in the league in tight end touchdowns, receiving yards, and receptions, and the Kansas City Chiefs tied their most winning season in franchise history, going 13-3 to finish the year out strong. Sitting with a first-round bye, the Chiefs waited to see who they were going to annihilate with patience, as at home, they were immortal, not losing a single game at Arrowhead since Week 7 of 2002. So, simply put, this team was a nuclear-level threat. Nobody has been able to contain the greatest show on turf in red. The only way to beat them was to outgun them, and the man who stepped into the ring to take on the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs was the MVP of the NFL, Peyton Manning, and the Indianapolis Colts, a team who will prove to be the most dangerous villain in this treacherous adventure. These were the 2 most explosive offenses in the league, so to start the game, both sides carved each other's defenses alive and torched them to a crisp, with both teams trading jabs until Manning found Reggie Wayne to take a 2-possession lead. So now, deep in the third, the Chiefs found themselves in a sizable manhole, and unfortunately for Kansas City, this game contained 0 punts to this point, and that pattern would only keep going as Dante Hall's opportunities to strike grew slimmer and slimmer. But then the Colts really beefed up and allowed the human joystick to ignite the crowd in Kansas City and return the ensuing kickoff for a massive touchdown. This game was still up in the air. All the Chiefs needed was one singular stop from their defense, but 2003 Peyton Manning simply existed on a higher plane of being, as Manning went right down the field and scored, finishing the game against the Chiefs, pulling off the win 38-31 in Arrowhead, dropping this stat line, which was somehow worse than his stats from his wildcard appearance before this, but this game is hard to even replicate in Madden. An unceremonious defeat for sure, but the Chiefs had just created a perfect blueprint. They were led by a Hall of Fame head coach and a Hall of Fame tight end, and had playmakers all over the offense, giving them the ability to beat any team off of pure scoring volume alone. But although all the pieces were laid out right there on the floor, the time just wasn't right yet, as over the next 2 seasons, All-Pro running back Priest Holmes' career quickly succumbed to injuries, while the Chiefs' defense fell right back to the bottom of the league in everything. And after a second straight season of no late January football, Dick Vermeil retired for the second time, this one being permanent, leaving the Kansas City Chiefs without a head coach. To replace Vermeil, the Chiefs brought in former Jets head coach Herm Edwards to see if he could squeeze anything that could be left in the talent jar for this roster, and he did a pretty damn good job, as despite an injury that would rule Trent Green out for 8 games, the Chiefs offense kept up some momentum from their past years, replacing Priest Holmes with his backup Larry Johnson, who blossomed into an All-Pro, and along with Tony Gonzalez still, the Chiefs went 9-7 and made the playoffs. And as the 2006 regular season came to a close, the Chiefs' defense was still slightly above average at best, and just plain bad at worst. They were encouragingly led by a bunch of young guys who the front office had picked up for the last couple of years though, so when the Chiefs lined up against Peyton Manning and the Colts once again in the playoffs, at least this time it seemed as if their defense had at least a little bit of a better shot at wounding Peyton Manning than what went down last time. Also, even better, the Colts had allowed opposing teams to rush for over 100 yards on them during every single game in the regular season. So all signs pointed to All-Pro running back Larry Johnson having the day of his career. But as the game began, it was the complete opposite, as Johnson was 100% held in check, with both sides trading field goals for most of the first half. And you know, the Chiefs could have taken control of this game so easily too, with the perfect opportunity getting hand-delivered to them when Peyton Manning threw a pick that went inside the 10-yard line on the return, where not only could the Chiefs not capitalize on picking up 9 yards, but then they proceeded to botch a 23-yard field goal. Then, after another Peyton Manning interception before halftime, the Chiefs were just too damn stubborn and stuck to their philosophy of the suck, going 3 and out, doing nothing in the process. Eventually, the Colts got things together somehow and basically watched the Chiefs stab themselves to death in the second half, taking care of business 23-8. Leaving Kansas City to cope with their own misery for yet another year. Now, the players still thought that this core could actually make some real noise in the AFC, but Carl Peterson and the rest of the front office seemingly thought otherwise, and a month or so after their playoff defeat, the Chiefs went straight to the media and said, hey, we don't want Trent Green anymore. Now that Dick Vermeil's gone, we just don't like him anymore, so he's up for grabs. And eventually, over the summer, the Chiefs finally found a partner and dealt their franchise quarterback of 6 years in Trent Green to the Miami Dolphins. But the problems only began at quarterback, with Larry Johnson also stirring the pot a little too much. Basically, he wanted more money than he was being offered and held out for most of training camp until Carl Peterson actually caved in and handed their now 28-year-old running back an illogical 5-year, $43 million contract with $19 million guaranteed, the most guaranteed money ever handed out by anyone in Kansas City. So now that they just handed a bag and a half to an old broken running back with a bit of a domestic issue, the Chiefs watched their budding defensive end Jared Allen get more and more pissed with his situation in KC, and even scarier, he was set up to be a free agent after the 2007 season concluded, and his return to Kansas City became less and less convincing when he found himself punished by Roger for a little joyride, and you know, he sold his house too, and didn't buy another one, so that probably means something. And with all that going on, believe it or not, when the season began, the Chiefs were terrible, as the Larry Johnson contract immediately chomped them in the ass when he got a boo-boo in Week 9 and missed the season with a right foot injury. And with the Chiefs rotating quarterbacks between Damon Huard and Brody Croyle throughout the season, even Tony Gonzalez couldn't keep the boat afloat, and the Chiefs finished the year with a 4-12 record. Then, over the next 2 years, things just kept spiraling out of control. That vision off of a revolutionary offense with Vermeil, Gonzalez, Holmes, and others was straying farther and farther away by the day, with Jared Allen and Tony G both getting traded for draft capital in consecutive seasons, and although he did his duty, Chiefs general manager Carl Peterson had seen all he needed to see and walked the plank on his own terms, and after 3 years of free-falling, the Chiefs had become one with the Rams, Lions, and Raiders, winning barely double-digit games in 3 years' time. So it was so obvious this roster was in desperate need of a massive shakeup. This is Todd Haley. You've probably guessed by the jacket there, but he ended up coaching the Chiefs, and his time in Kansas City was interesting, but not interesting enough. And after being brought in prior to the 2009 season by new general manager Scott Pioli, he almost instantaneously became known as a grade A asshole in Kansas City and lost the locker room in record time. But despite his coaching ineptitudes, the Chiefs had slowly begun rebuilding something resembling a core, as although they recently whiffed horribly on Glenn Dorsey with the 5th pick in 2008 and Tyson Jackson with the 3rd pick in 2009, but they eventually picked things up again, drafting All-Pro running back Jamal Charles in 2008, using their pick they received in the Jared Allen trade for that, and later future All-Pro safety Eric Berry in the 2010 draft. In a little over 2 seasons on the job, Haley racked up 19 wins and 26 losses. Basically just mediocrity itself, and in 2010, when the Chiefs had a 10-6 record, Haley rode a Pro Bowl year from quarterback Matt Castle and an All-Pro campaign from Jamal Charles to a playoff berth, and subsequent first-round exit in 2010, keeping that playoff win drought going. But then 1 year later, with both of those players and the young Eric Berry combining to play just 13 games, Todd Haley was fired after a 5-8 start in 2011, with Kansas City promoting defensive coordinator Romeo Crennel to interim head coach. Nobody was truly sure if Crennel would actually hold on to the head coaching position after the offseason, but to his credit, the Chiefs finished strong under him last season, almost going undefeated in his 3 games coaching, defeating the 13-0 Green Bay Packers in Week 15, and were a blocked field goal away from beating the Raiders too. But if there were any questions, they were answered when in early January, the Chiefs made Romeo Crennel their 12th coach in franchise history and signed Crennel to a 3-year contract, thus beginning the most depressing season in Chiefs history, and unfortunately, not even in a fun way at all. Before the 2012 season began, this year was set up to be the final test for general manager Scott Pioli, as with allegations about him being overly controlling to the point where employees were convinced their phones were tapped to test their loyalty or something, I guess. Unless they started winning right now, Scott Pioli was going to be done in Kansas City, and even that might not have been enough. But luckily for all the Chiefs fans who wanted Scott gone, I guess, the 2012 Chiefs started the season out on a horrible note and instantly became contenders for the worst Chiefs team in franchise history.
Pucks out of the gun, Freeman fires, it is caught, touchdown! Richardson. Touchdown.
From weeks 1 through 9, KC found a way to never hold a single lead at any point in regulation at any time, but they actually won a game in week 3, even with that fact being true. But sitting at a 1-7 record while being this unwatchable on the field, Chiefs fans decided that if change wasn't going to happen inside the organization, then they would have to do it themselves, with the organization known as Save Our Chiefs being founded by some random-ass dudes who had the money to literally hire planes to fly banners encouraging the Chiefs to fire Scott Pioli and bench Matt Castle, among other things, go over the Chiefs stadiums. Insane. And the Chiefs cult didn't stop there either, encouraging people to wear all black to their matchup against Cincinnati in Week 11 to keep pushing for some more form of change in the front office. But even with all the valiant fan efforts, at the very least, they still had to grit their teeth and tough the season out with Pioli and Crennel. But all of that disappointment and anger was put on hold when the Kansas City Chiefs, the organization that already dealt with the premature death of Derek Thomas, had yet another horrible tragedy strike them when on December 1st of 2012, Chiefs linebacker Javon Belcher murdered his girlfriend Cassandra Perkins, shooting her at least 9 times, and then fled the scene. Belcher, with a blood alcohol concentration well over the legal limit, requested a personal meeting with Scott Pioli and Romeo Crennel, and once the three met each other in the Chiefs parking lot among other people, at about 8 a.m. on December 1st, Javon Belcher was dead. He ended up taking his own life in front of his general manager and head coach. Forgive me for trying to rush that segment, but it's just a lot. And this situation just made everyone forget about football for the time being, as not only were Scott and Romeo scarred by watching a man they once cared about pull the trigger on himself in front of them, but in Jamaal Charles' case, the face of the franchise, the running back who Chiefs fans had put every ounce of hope in over the last couple of years, was probably the most affected out of anyone on the team, because the woman that Belcher killed was Jamaal's wife's cousin, who was only introduced to Belcher by Jamaal's own doing, so the amount of grief he was feeling at this time cannot be understated. So that's the 2012 Chiefs season right there. They finished their season from hell, going 2-14, and now had no choice but to wash their hands completely of their past, firing both Scott Pioli and Romeo Crennel for good, looking ahead for a better Chiefs future. But before we get back into the video, I gotta tell you about this video sponsor, Magic Spoon. For me, when I was a wee lad, I loved me a good old bowl of cereal and Cartoon Network in the morning, but as I got older and started getting huge gains, I needed something different, and Magic Spoon does exactly that for me. Magic Spoon is a cereal with about 13 to 14 grams of protein, 4 to 5 grams of carbs, and contains 0 grams of sugar. Perfect for my new morning routine. The last thing you want to do is bomb yourself with sugar in the morning, and a nice bowl of Magic Spoon cereal is a great answer to that little predicament. You can have this cereal if you're trying out a keto diet, sugar-free diet, grain-free, soy-free, or maybe if you just want some more protein in your life, the variety pack is where you should be looking. And this pack comes in fruity, frosted cocoa, and peanut butter flavors, and personally, I'm a big fan of the frosted one. Definitely my go-to. So if Magic Spoon's high-protein, zero-sugar cereal sounds good to you, either scan the QR code that's been on the screen or click the link in the description to use promo code TUBFROG at checkout to get $5 off on any order, or go to magicspoon.com/TUBFROG yourself. And if for some reason you're not satisfied with your order, Magic Spoon will completely refund your money, so you might as well try it out and use code TUBFROG at checkout for $5 off. So a huge thanks to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video, and with that, let's get back to the video. And who better to turn the Chiefs into winners than the hottest coach on the market in terms of success and physical attributes, as the Kansas City Chiefs hired Andy Reid, the master of f***ing up clock management, as the Chiefs' new head coach, as well as former Packers director of football operations John Dorsey to become the new general manager. But luckily for the new guy in town, Andy Reid was not actually inheriting a terrible roster. I mean, yeah, although the Chiefs only won 2 games last year, this team had a total of 6 Pro Bowlers on it, all of which were in the prime of their careers or getting to that point. And just around the corner was the 2013 NFL Draft, where the Chiefs held the #1 overall pick and had even more opportunity to stack up the talent. But the 2013 NFL Draft was weird, like really abnormally weird. Nobody truly knew who the Chiefs were going to take at 1, as some thought offensive tackle Luke Joeckel, others thought they were confident they would grab Oregon's Dion Jordan, or dare I say, Geno Smith. But the Chiefs went in their own direction, and the first pick in the Andy Reid, John Dorsey era was offensive tackle Eric Fisher, who was definitely miles better than anything around that area of the draft. But still, this selection wasn't even close to their best pickup in this draft. To keep the status quo running in KC again, the Chiefs drafted Cincinnati tight end Travis Kelce in the 3rd round, a guy who had mild character concerns, but was obviously very talented and seemed like a great fit in the Andy Reid offensive scheme. So just like that, in 1 year, the Chiefs went from probably the most depressing team in franchise history to one of the most exciting. With the defense only set to get better with Pro Bowlers and All-Pros everywhere, the offense was still led by Jamaal Charles and other serviceable receivers like Dwayne Bowe, who just signed a brand new 5-year, $54 million deal. The only thing missing within the walls of Kansas City was a quarterback, because remember, KC fans were not going to have Matt Castle take snaps for the team for as long as he lives on this earth. So somebody new needed to be brought in to help the Chiefs compete. Luckily, Kansas City knew just the guy to go for, as on the West Coast, Alex Smith had recently found himself as the most overqualified backup in the league behind the emerged Colin Kaepernick, and the Chiefs couldn't resist the opportunity, bringing in the disgruntled former #1 pick. Now, going into 2013, nobody really had any idea how good or bad the new-look Chiefs were going to be, but I would say the majority of people truly expected there to be growing pains in the new Reid-Smith era. However, what would occur would be one of the most impressive one-year turnarounds in NFL history.
And there he goes! McCluster by Rocca! He's chased by Paulson! And into the end zone! That is a Kansas City touchdown!
Incredible. Just incredible. Going into Week 11, the 2013 Kansas City Chiefs were undefeated. And remember, for reference on how insane that is, literally 365 days prior, this exact same franchise was doing what they could to stop their own fans from flying helicopters carrying anti-general manager propaganda from going over their own stadium. I mean, it was just a dream. This season could not have gone better with Jamal Charles and Eric Berry logging all-pro seasons, and the Chiefs' new leader Alex Smith had a complete resurgence, putting up career highs in total volume, passing yards, and touchdowns, just to name a few categories. But although all of this was desperately needed to keep Chiefs fans from becoming a dying breed, Kansas City did finish a little shaky to end the season, in no small part due to injuries to key dudes like Justin Houston, but it's fine, right? Andy Reid is usually pretty good at this kind of stuff, but because Peyton Manning was still alive and on the Broncos, Denver took the #1 seed, meaning the Chiefs, who started out 9-0, had to play in the wild card, and they ended up going up against none other than the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, although the Colts are not exactly the team you want to face if you're the red and white, like, at all, especially after getting manhandled by them just 2 weeks prior. With Justin Houston set to return, giving the 6th-ranked defense in the NFL even more meat, many expected the Chiefs to cover the spread of this game and upset the Colts on the road. So let's see how the Andy Reid experience in the playoffs will begin for the Chiefs. And well, it looked perfect early on, as although the Chiefs had begun piling up injuries like, wow, how the hell did that many people even get hurt? But whatever, the Chiefs powered through and were just beating the Colts into a bloody pulp, letting out all their anger and hatred for what this franchise did to them, ending so many of their past playoff teams, suffocating the Colts on defense, and scalding them on offense to take an insurmountable 38-10 lead. So, yeah. The entire second half of the third quarter and on could not have been played out worse if this game were directed and acted out with a script. The Chiefs blew so many opportunities to win the game themselves, putting Chiefs fans right back on the life support system they had stashed away from the 2012 season. They actually did it again. The Colts just ruined everything, and even scarier, the man whose time as head coach of Philadelphia is best remembered by the ability to have lists like this even exist, continued to bring his bad luck and coaching shorts to Kansas City, electing to pass the ball 25 times in the second half, rather than at least pretending to care about bleeding clock a little bit, as the Chiefs blew a 28-point lead and lost the game 45-44, creating one of the most impressive win probability graphs you'll ever see. And after the season, Chiefs fans feared the worst. They've seen this charade once before. They watched a noteworthy coach lead an undefeated team for a majority of the regular season, only to get their hearts plucked out of their bodies by the Colts. And over the next 2 Andy Reid seasons, the Chiefs continue to blindly follow the formula of mediocrity they set out for themselves already, as in 2014, the Chiefs missed the playoffs, regressing significantly from the season prior. And to begin the 2015 campaign, it looked like Andy Reid's time with KC could be up any minute now, as through week 6, the Chiefs found themselves with a pitiful 1-5 record. And if things weren't bad enough, Jamaal Charles tore his ACL in their week 5 loss to the Bears, an injury that would effectively end his career, and at the same time as the Chiefs lost their best offensive player, their all-pro safety Eric Berry was still working his way back into action after recovering from cancer. So things were not only looking rough, but Kansas City was in very real danger of being thrust right back into rebuilding mode and begin the search for another quarterback and coach. But unlike with previous coaches, the players had faith in Big Red. So KC had to take it one win at a time, first squeaking out a win at home versus the Steelers to start giving at least a little bit of optimism back into the year, and then they got another one, then another one, and another, and another, and another, and another, and now holy the Chiefs might be the best team in the NFL. The Chiefs won 10 games in a row, and even without Jamaal Charles, Kansas City remained faithful to their scheme and utilized a running back committee with what they had, siphoning every last drop of talent out of backups Spencer Ware and the Sharkhandrick West to keep defenses worried about the run while Alex Smith did his usual game manager shenanigans. Travis Kelce also enjoyed a breakout season, going for near 900 yards on the year, and he did that along with the help of the usual Chiefs defense that just kept getting better and better by the year, and what you get is a team that gets progressively scarier as the season goes on. Andy Reid had overcome the doubters, turning a bad offense on paper into the model of efficiency, picking up more 3rd and 3s than any other team in the league. But once again, with the Denver Broncos still good and quarterbacked by guess who still, the Chiefs played in an away wildcard game again, but finally didn't have to play the Colts and got the luxury to face against Brian Hoyer and the Houston Texans. And how'd the game go? Well, like I said, they played against Brian Hoyer, but honestly, this game ended within the first 11 seconds when Knile Davis harnessed the life essence of Dante Hall and returned the opening kickoff 106 yards, and the Chiefs never looked back. So although this seemed like a small achievement, this win was huge for Chiefs fans, ending a 22-year playoff losing streak. But the party only lasted a few days, and as the saying goes, there's always a bigger fish, with the Chiefs not being prepared nearly enough to take on Thomas and the Patriots, falling behind in the first half and never recovering. Now don't get me wrong, KC was not going to win this game, but they weren't doing themselves any favors either, when on the Chiefs' last touchdown drive, they killed any hopes for coming back into the game themselves when Andy Reid just continued to show that his demons may never leave him as he sat back and watched Alex Smith orchestrate the second slowest drive since 1998 when a team trailed by more than a touchdown, showing zero sense of urgency. It just seemed like Andy Reid's legacy was predetermined, and he would be forever known as one of the best regular season coaches to never win a Super Bowl, and that sentiment seemed to only get stronger and stronger as the years went on, with the Chiefs losing in the divisional round in 2016 and the wild card in 2017, failing to win a single playoff game, with both L's being devastating in their own special way. After the 2017 campaign, it seemed like an end of an era. Alex Smith and Andy Reid had done well delivering multiple double-digit win campaigns, but at this point, the Chiefs had just become so comfortable with being pretty good but not great. So before the 2017 season, the Chiefs took the biggest gamble they possibly could have, betting on the one thing that has remained pretty consistent with the Chiefs in the 2010s, their draft ability. So let's rewind back just a little to the 2016 NFL Draft, where the Chiefs began to show they were willing to be behind their scouting department with 100% confidence, selecting Chris Jones with their 2nd round pick, a man who will be indispensable for the Chiefs in the future, and in one of the most controversial draft selections literally ever, John Dorsey pissed everyone off and drafted West Alabama wide receiver Tyreek Hill. Now, the talent wasn't the question here. The issue was that Tyreek had recently choked his pregnant girlfriend, and the moment that Chiefs fans and the media saw Kansas City take Hill when he arguably wasn't even going to be drafted, obviously people instantly feared the worst, with Belcher's situation occurring just 4 years prior. It had gotten to the point where many were listing Tyreek Hill as straight up the worst pick in the entire draft, but with hindsight, he probably would have gone top 5, as Tyreek to this day continues to prove how special of a talent he truly is. Which leads us to the 2017 NFL Draft, where John Dorsey would conduct his last draft as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs, but His last would be probably his most memorable, when Dorsey again found a late-round gem who would turn out to be their future quarterback's best friend on the field for a little bit in running back Kareem Hunt, and then the Chiefs executed their grand plan. Well, multiple weeks before the 2017 draft, Andy Reid, John Dorsey, the co-director of player personnel, and future general manager Brett Veach and others met together and hatched a plan. A plan to do everything in their power to change the future of this organization forever by trading up to select Texas Tech's Patrick Mahomes, no matter the cost. And sure enough, with sweat trickling down every person in the Chiefs front office, everything was playing out the way they had assumed, and then it happened. The Chiefs traded up from the 27th overall pick all the way up to the 10th position with the Buffalo Bills to draft Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. And now, a whole new era of Chiefs football was about to be born. Now, like I said, the 2017 season ended at the hands of, well, I guess twice at the hands of Marcus Mariota and the Titans after blowing a 21-3 lead. And after that, Alex Smith's time as co-captain of the Chiefs alongside the Walrus was done. And just days after their last game with Alex Smith, he was dealt to Washington, leaving Mahomes, who sat out close to the entire 2017 season, to take on the starting quarterback job. And going into 2018, once again, nobody knew even remotely how Mahomes would look, but the Chiefs as a team over the last couple of years, even close to a decade at this point, had built up a core of players perfectly fit to welcome a star quarterback, with 3 top 3 to 5 players at their positions in the NFL's leading rusher in 2017, Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce, who have all been as consistent as possible, as well as a defense that wasn't projecting to be great, but still had old pieces gelling with new ones to be not the Raiders at least. And I say all of that in spite of the fact that there were a lot of people out there who truly believed Mahomes could shock the world and take the Chiefs to even the playoffs, but in what was effectively his first season starting as the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mahomes elevated the Chiefs to a good team under Alex Smith to a team that was ready to contend for a Super Bowl.
Mahomes lines it up wide open as hell. How quick was that?
It all came together. All of it. The Chiefs' formula that they had built so long ago was elevated to heights the league didn't even know existed, with KC putting themselves in perfect position to get lucky, now being proud owners of the MVP in the NFL, as the Kansas City Chiefs won 12 games in 2018 and were led by 3 All-Pros on offense, becoming a threat to score from anywhere on the field. This truly was a new era, and if you don't believe me, when the Chiefs played in the divisional round, of course, because the scriptwriters really like these cute little symbols, Kansas City would face off against the Colts, but this time, things were a little different, with Indy never even standing a chance against the all-but-inevitable buzzsaw in KC. But as special as this season was, the Chiefs still had to take the test. The test that all AFC contenders had to take in the last 25 years or so, and that was to see if they were worthy of giving the New England Patriots a run for their money. So they took on the Patriots in the 2018 AFC Championship game, and what resulted was one of the most impressive old school versus new school matchups we've ever seen, but it took some time to get there, with the Patriots defense completely shutting down Mahomes and the Chiefs in the first half, and even in the rare moments where the Patriots slipped up, Mahomes actually failed to capitalize on his opportunities. But once the second half began, this game truly turned into a heavyweight UFC fight, with both sides landing heavy shots on each other one after the other, but in the end, Tom Brady is inevitable, and with the help of some penalties and general lack of experience on the Chiefs' part, the Patriots dynasty still reigned supreme 37-31. So although the Chiefs lost, every single person believed that not only would they be back in just a few seasons to take the crown from the Patriots and become the new kings of the AFC, but it turns out that although everyone was right, that transferring of power would happen much faster than anyone could have possibly thought of. The 2019 Chiefs were just a different beast, bringing in even more huge acquisitions in Frank Clark and Tyrann Mathieu, giving both of these dudes massive contracts, and with the Chiefs' big three in Mahomes, Hill, and Kelce still at the top of their game, the Chiefs proved that their time was now, weathering a Mahomes injury during the season, defeating the Patriots in Week 14, and with the help of Ryan Fitzpatrick, and earned a first-round bye going into the playoffs. The divisional round started out by showing a little foreshadowing for later on, by getting the teeth knocked out of them by the Houston Texans early on, but after Bill O'Brien's aura proved too strong and the Texans' luck ran out, the Chiefs, led by Mahomes, came back from yet another seemingly impossible deficit, this time in one goddamn quarter, embarrassing the Texans with 51 points in 3 quarters, and fully expected to face the evil empire in the AFC Championship to pass their test this year. But it turns out that Derrick Henry can run a football, like, pretty well, and the 9-7 Tennessee Titans took down the 2 biggest threats to the Chiefs in the AFC in the Patriots and Ravens, and all of a sudden, the Kansas City Chiefs might just do it. For the first time in the Andy Reid era, they might just make the Super Bowl. But it wasn't going to be that easy though, and for Chiefs fans who haven't seen even a Super Bowl appearance in 50 years, they needed to see it to believe it. And although early on it was all Titans, like usual, the 2019 Chiefs escaped their own sins, and off of a spectacular Mahomes run with seconds left in the second half, the Chiefs took control of the game and never looked back. It was actually going to happen. The Chiefs were going to make it to the Super Bowl, and once Patrick Mahomes found Sammy Watkins on a deep ball to seal the game, it set in for Chiefs fans. The raw emotion of finally making it to a Super Bowl. The last 50 years of misery have all been numbed for just a brief moment, and in Super Bowl 54, the Kansas City Chiefs would take on the San Francisco 49ers for a shot at immortality. So the game began, and just like usual, the Chiefs started off slow, but this time, when you add on the nerves of being in a Super Bowl, that slow start was stretched out for more than 3 quarters, and after a late interception thrown by Mahomes being his second of the game, it looked like the Chiefs were going to suffer the same fate as Andy Reid's first Super Bowl team as a head coach, needing their unreliable defense to step up and maybe a spark plug on offense to save their season. And luckily for the Chiefs, the defense did its part, and then after an incompletion to Tyreek Hill that looked good on first viewing, Patrick Mahomes had to step up to the plate and walked over to the sidelines and talked to his offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy and said a few words that changed Chiefs history forever.
Do we have time to run walls?
It turns out they did have time, just barely though, as with DeForest Buckner closing in on Mahomes, he was still able to find his all-pro receiver Tyreek Hill to keep the Chiefs alive. Then he had to get the other guy involved a little too, and found his other all-pro in Travis Kelce in the end zone to bring the game to within 3. And just like that, like how they've done all year long, the millisecond where the momentum shifts in favor of the Chiefs, it's already over, as a pair of Damian Williams touchdowns sealed the deal. The Kansas City Chiefs were Super Bowl champions. Patrick Mahomes, the true savior of Kansas City, was named the Super Bowl MVP, Andy Reid proved all his doubters wrong, and the other guys put together by John Dorsey and Brett Veach all played massive roles in this team's success, and the scariest part is, they were just getting started. So now with a Super Bowl under their belt, they started the next offseason off by handing Mahomes the most lucrative quarterback contract they could have given him, signing Kermit to a 10-year, $403 million deal, all of which being completely deserved and more. Then in 2020, the Chiefs truly sparked dynasty conversations, winning 14 games during the regular season, and once again were led by the most unstoppable offensive trio in the last 10 years, as well as a terrifying interior defensive front, with Kansas City running right through the AFC to reach the Super Bowl, where, now in a different colored shirt, they still fell to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the weirdest season in NFL history. And when the 2021 season came around, there were murmurings that, you know, maybe the Chiefs don't deserve dynasty conversation yet. And through week 7, when the Chiefs found themselves with a losing record sitting at 3-4 after sloppy losses to the Bills and Titans, it seemed like that might have been the reality we were living in. But remember, this is just how Andy Reid operates, and the Chiefs picked themselves right back up and finished out the season winning 9 of their next 10 games, and got the luxury to play against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card, making quick work of them as well. Then in the divisional round, Mahomes and the Chiefs were tested more than they ever could have imagined, as they were no longer the young and upcoming team from 3 years ago. No, They were the Patriots' successors, and now that they held the crown, everyone was going to take their best shot at them, and that's exactly what the Buffalo Bills did, forcing the Chiefs to pull out miracle one after the other to just barely defeat Buffalo at home in one of the greatest playoff games ever. But after exhausting their resources against Josh Allen and the Bills, they seemingly ran out of gas in the AFC Championship game. After a first half where it looked like the Bengals stood no chance, Patrick Mahomes devolved into his college form and maybe worse, making downright stupid decisions that ended up costing the Chiefs a Super Bowl appearance. This created a 2022 campaign for the Chiefs motivated by revenge. But before the season, people were a little skeptical as to how the Chiefs would perform after losing Tyreek Hill in a trade to the Miami Dolphins. And with so many young guys being given critical roles like Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey, there was more uncertainty with the Chiefs' ability to succeed more than any year since 2018. But come on, what do you think happened? The Chiefs, of course, dominated, and with Patrick Mahomes continuing to rewrite record books and win yet another MVP, this time even without the services of his all-pro wide receiver, the Chiefs once again won 14 games, beat the Jaguars down with their talent, with Mahomes getting a bad ankle injury that he played through, and then got their sweet, sweet revenge on the Cincinnati Bengals in Arrowhead, embarrassing the mayor 23-20. So here we are again, Super Bowl 57, the Kansas City Chiefs, the team trying to become the NFL's newest dynasty versus Andy Reid's ghost, the team representing his past failures and shortcomings, the Philadelphia Eagles, who sported a completely balanced team top to bottom and would not be leaving this arena without forcing the Chiefs to unleash their entire arsenal. And that's exactly what happened. With both teams playing at their absolute peaks, the two quarterbacks in Mahomes and Hurts fought to the death, back and forth, until the magical throws of Mahomes, genius play calling of Andy Reid, and the Chiefs' battle-hardened experience proved to just be too much. And after a late penalty, the Super Bowl was decided. The Kansas City Chiefs won their second Super Bowl in the Patrick Mahomes-Andy Reid era, making a very good case for themselves as an NFL dynasty. Now, are the Chiefs a dynasty? Well, to me personally, I still think they need like one more Super Bowl, but they might get there, and that is completely subjective. And everything that we've seen over the last 20 years for the Chiefs has been executed near flawlessly to get to the position that they are at today. It started off with a blueprint way back in the day, then they added talent slowly over the years, found an all-time great coach, and put themselves in the exact position they needed to be to get lucky. And now with Patrick Mahomes leading the Chiefs into the future, the Kansas City Chiefs have been completely redeemed. And you know, maybe by this season's end, we might indisputably be looking at the NFL's most unstoppable new dynasty. Anyways, if you like this video, then subscribe, because I got a lot of videos on the channel just like this one. And if you like this video, then watch this video right here where I went over all the misery of Jerry Jones as his time as the owner and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. It's pretty good, trust me. Anyways, until next time.